Welcome to My Life in Israel podcast, news updates from Israel, where I report brief news updates about the Israel-Gaza war and Israeli politics with added commentary so you have a better understanding of what's going on here in Israel that you won't hear from mainstream news. All right, here are today's headlines from Israel, from this group, Israel Real Time, on their WhatsApp group. They're short little snippets of what's going on today, and if I feel like giving any commentary, I'll give commentary and I'll show the videos that they provide. So let's get to it. The first one from today: IDF eliminates terrorist in Judea and Samaria after rock-throwing attack on civilian roadway. U.S. and Israel coordinate strategy on Iran as direct talks begin and military preparations escalate. Those are the headlines, and now we're going to get into each individual thing. During a counter-terrorism operation in the area of Termos Aya, IDF soldiers identified 3 terrorists hurling rocks at vehicles traveling on a nearby highway, putting the lives of civilians at serious risk. The soldiers responded by opening fire. 1 terrorist was eliminated and 2 others were wounded. The IDF emphasized that it will continue operations throughout Judea and Samaria to ensure the safety of local residents and maintain security. Okay, I want to talk about this because this is a very common theme in the pro-Palestinian narrative that, the Palestinians don't have any weapons. They just have rocks. They just have little rocks, little pebbles that they throw at people. And there's nothing seems to be wrong with that. It doesn't hurt anybody. And somehow it's justified when that's obviously not true. These are not just little pebbles that people throw at people. These are huge bits of concrete. They're concrete and thrown at random passing cars on the highway. And they don't stop and ask whether you're religious or not, whether you're on the left or on the right, you support or don't. They don't care. They don't look for just cars that are carrying adults or carrying IDF soldiers. They literally throw these rocks at every single car indiscriminately, whoever's in the vehicle. And there's been reports of injuries and even deaths of women, pregnant women, and children multiple times. So this narrative that you want to keep saying that, because they don't have weapons, they're forced to use rocks to resist or whatever. There's no resist. From the cars that are coming on the highway are not hurling rocks at them, are not trying to run down them. These are offensive acts done by these, mostly even children. And then you wonder why, they have children in jail. This is why they have children in jail, is because they do this and they cause injury and death to Israelis, innocent Israelis who are just minding their own business, driving on the highway. So that's my little bit of commentary for that. On to the next one. This is just talking about the World Zionist Congress and voting in it for Jews and Israelis. This really has nothing to do with the conflict. Okay. President Trump. U.S. President Trump announced that Washington will begin direct talks with Iran on Saturday. He issued a stark warning, stating, "If talks with Iran aren't successful, I think Iran will be in great danger." Okay, that goes without saying. Next. Israeli defense officials remain skeptical that Tehran will agree to any effective deal unless it first endures a severe military blow. According to Yedioth Ahronoth, the IDF is actively preparing for such a strike, believing it can independently inflict significant damage to Iran's nuclear infrastructure, missile systems, and Air Force capabilities. Earlier today, Chief of the General Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, reviewed the preliminary findings of the March 23rd shooting incident in the Tel al-Sultan area. The report was delivered by Southern Command Chief Major General Yaniv Azur. I'm not really familiar with this incident. I really don't know what they're talking about. Okay. Lieutenant General Zamir has ordered a deeper investigation to be conducted in the coming days by the General Staff's investigation mechanism, led by Major General Reserve Yoav Har Evan. Once complete, the conclusions will be presented to the Chief of the General Staff for a final decision. The IDF emphasized that the event took place in an active combat zone. According to the preliminary inquiry, troops opened fire in response to a perceived threat, following a previous hostile encounter in the same area. Notably, 6 of those killed were confirmed as Hamas terrorists. Okay, again, no innocent civilians. All claims and concerns raised about the incident will be examined thoroughly, and the investigation aims to bring full clarity and transparency to what occurred. Again, I don't really know what they're talking about, so I can't really comment on us. Joint IDF and ISA forces carried out a precise overnight strike targeting Hassan Abdel Fattah Mohammed Asli, a Hamas terrorist operating in the Han Yunis area under the false guise of a journalist. Again, journalist Asli, who owns a press company, was an active member of Hamas's Han Yunis brigade and took part in the October 7th infiltration into Israeli territory. He participated in the massacre, documenting and uploading graphic footage of looting, arson, and murder on social media. Prior to the strike, the IDF implemented several measures to avoid civilian harm, including the use of precision munitions, aerial surveillance, and additional intelligence. Okay, this goes along with this recent viral claim that that Israel has murdered more journalists in Gaza than all the wars combined in the last 100 years or whatever. This is really a lie, because these are not journalists per se. The people on October 7th who were using GoPros could effectively consider themselves journalists by documenting what they did. So, and it's known that these Hamas people know that Israel is not supposed to shoot at journalists and press people, so they actively wear press vests and to avoid being killed. So this narrative that you want to claim that every single person that claims they're a journalist or is seen wearing a press or a journalist jacket is somehow a real journalist is just propaganda. It's literally Hamas propaganda. Everybody that is in Gaza works for Hamas. If there's no free press in Gaza, if you're a journalist in Gaza, you're connected to Hamas. Hamas approves everything that comes out of the media in Gaza. So anything you see coming out of Gaza is approved by Hamas, and it must promote Hamas's agenda. So yeah, this is all propaganda. All right, so let's go back and look at this video. This is terrorists hurling rocks toward a highway in the area of Termis Aya, endangering civilians. You can see them hurling the rocks. All right, next news item. Court hearing on Shin Bet Head updates on yet another deal offer. Ballistic missiles fired by the Houthis at Israel overnight, apparently intercepted by the Americans, no alarms in Israel. Since March 18th, when the IDF resumed its offensive against Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis have launched at least 10 ballistic missiles and 2 suicide drones at Israel. Suicide drone fired by the Houthis at Israel last night, intercepted before crossing into Israel. No alarms in Israel. PM meets with President Trump. Trump, we talked about Iran and the trade and solutions that Israel is working on. Trump, the hostages told me there wasn't a single person in Gaza who showed kindness or gave an extra slice of bread. Okay, so there you go. There are no innocent civilians in Gaza. They are all against Israelis and Israel. To the outside world, they seem innocent because they're saying, oh, poor me, we're being bombed, we're being destroyed, but they don't care. They don't care. They still hate Israel. So, and Israelis, so they're not going to show any support for Israel. Israeli culture conflicts. Tel Aviv Mayor Ron Huldai, anyone who believes in God cannot accept the principles of democracy. Okay, this is again, this is a culture divide here in Israel between secular and religious people. And Tel Aviv is notoriously majority secular. And this mayor of Tel Aviv in particular is vehemently anti-religious. There has been several laws passed in Tel Aviv against public displays of religion. And it's actually kind of disgusting. And supposedly a democracy, Israel is a democracy, and yet They are vehemently against having any representation of religion in the public sphere, which is not democracy, it's fascism. And you want to call the right fascist when they are literally the secular on the left who are anti-religion are the most fascist and violent that are. I could go on that, but let's continue with the day's news. On the Shin Bet, this morning, the High Court hearing against the dismissal of the head of the Shin Bet being broadcast live in Israel. Session halted, recess called as a bereaved father in the audience stands and lashes out at the former Shin Bet chief for the intelligence failures of October 7th, resulting in the death of his child. The court observer seats have now been cleared prior to resumption of the hearing. Amit Segal comments, he's a reporter. Judge Amit expressed surprise at the shouting when the High Court gradually takes over basic legislative powers like the Knesset, when it is broadcast live like the Knesset. In the end, it will end in shouting like in the Knesset. So this is another internal dispute here in Israel. The left is up in arms that Netanyahu wants to fire the head of the Shin Bet, Ronen Bar, I believe his name is, because he has made very discriminatory claims and accusations against Jewish, the Jewish settlers in the Judean Samaria that he's vehemently against and wants to actively arrest without any charges. And then here you go. Here's a perfect example. You guys want to claim that Palestinians in the West Bank are just grabbed and put in jail without any charges, in administrative detention, without any cause or whatever. And we know that's not true because they do that for security reasons. But they also, there's a Jewish version of the Shin Bet that actively goes after these quote unquote settlers in the West Bank and harasses them just like you claim the Palestinians are harassed, and puts them in administrative detention without any cause or anything to back it up. And it's very it's very anti-Jewish, again, anti-Jewish sentiment, anti-religious sentiment coming from our internal security forces. And this is why Netanyahu wants to get rid of them. And somehow it's being put against the court for him not to, because now the Shin Bet is doing an active investigation into members of Netanyahu's personal Knesset government people. And so now they're shouting, oh, this is in some kind of retaliation because you're being investigated or members of your party are being investigated, when it has nothing to do with anything. And this is what the left always does, is all they do, this is the purpose of these investigations. This is the whole purpose of these trials that Netanyahu has been subjected to for like years, like literally years. He's been under indictment and trial because for nothing, it's too much to even go into, but this is how they control the government, the security forces, and the justice system, just like in the United States, literally just like in the United States, with Trump's constantly being investigated and trying to be on trial and impeached and whatever. They do this so that they can turn around and claim like the president, the PM, prime minister can't do anything to change anything because he's on current indictment and current trial, and it's in a conflict of interest, when they literally do the same thing on their end when it happens on their end. And we point out any conflict of interest on ruling on anything, they literally ignore it and they put everything through. And there's no accountability on the left. They literally just hired a new Supreme Court president who had conflict of interest, and yet he still got put on the court. So this is the deep state, people. This is the Israeli deep state. You guys, there is a deep state in Israel, and this is what it's all about. Okay, on to the next thing. Microsoft has a big presence in Israel with multiple technology development centers and hundreds of employees. A Moroccan and an Indian engineer became heroes of the Arab world and the Palestinians after they lashed out at senior executives of Microsoft, where they work, at a conference on artificial intelligence due to the alleged assistance Microsoft provided in the field of artificial intelligence to the Israeli war machine in Gaza. The two were fired from Microsoft yesterday. So there you go. I don't really care. All right, that's just funny. Boulder attack, Hawara, Samaria. Monday, a number of terrorists threw boulders at an Israeli vehicle in Hawara in the Samaria division. The throwing caused damage to the vehicle, but no injuries were reported. Security forces arrived, arrested 3. Here, another attack on an Israeli vehicle, and it caused damage to the car, but no injuries, thankfully. Samaria. IDF tanks enter the Arab city of Tubas, which has been the source of multiple terrorists and attack. That's pretty much all it says. Updates on yet another deal offer. Israel now confirms that it did arrive, but wrapped in impossible conditions of ending the war and accepting Hamas's conditions for it, which include complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, including from the Egyptian border, allowing them to smuggle and rearm, permanent ending of the war with international guarantees, and complete rebuilding of Gaza, prior to the release of all the hostages. The received proposal is 8 live hostages and 8 dead will be released in exchange for a 50-day ceasefire and the terms above. Okay, that's a hard no. That's never going to happen. This is the same thing that they've been wanting the whole time. They want a complete stop of the war, and they want to stay in power, and they don't want to give us back all our hostages. So, and then you wonder why that we're continuing the war. So that's it, people. It's very simple. Give us our hostages, put down your weapons, leave, and it's all over. But no, they don't want to do that, so we continue. Turkey. Report. Israel and Turkey are holding direct talks in an attempt to establish an orderly channel to prevent conflicts in Syria. Well, that's good. U.S. versus the Houthis. Attack waves by the U.S. continued overnight. U.S. Secretary of Defense. The attacks on the Houthis will become increasingly harsh until they stop attacking. The Iranians have to stop arming them. The Houthis claim to have targeted 2 U.S. destroyers with several missiles and drones. U.S.-Iran talks. U.S. Deputy Special Envoy Morgan Ortagus, Steve Witkoff's deputy, told Al Arabiya, "We will not fall into Biden's trap. Indirect talks that last for years with the Iranians pulling our strings. That will not happen. The talks need to be quick and focused on dismantling Iran's nuclear weapons program." Trump. "I prefer a deal with Iran. If the talks fail, Iran will be in great danger because it must not have nuclear weapons. If the talks fail, it will be a very bad day for Iran." Trump's announcement of direct high-level talks with Iran comes in stark contrast to all official statements in Tehran and its consistent line for years. As of now, no official response from Iran has been provided. Iran in response to Trump's latest statements about direct talks. A planned psychological move designed to influence local and global public opinion. Okay, so basically they're denying that they said that, and it's all for propaganda to influence public opinion. Okay, so we'll see. That's it for now. Stay tuned for next time. Thanks for listening to My Life in Israel podcast. Follow me on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for non-podcast videos. If you enjoyed the podcast, like, share, comment, and follow me on Spotify and other podcast apps so you never miss another episode. Support my work and support Israel by making a one-time or monthly donation or become a subscriber to get access to exclusive content. The links are in my profile and description. And stay tuned because I have a lot more to say. Am Israel High.